The oak door burst open, not by wind but by raw fury. A curse over $3,000 had been hurled at my mother's heart, tearing the family fabric.
Your soul's worth $3,000?
It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I, Eleanor, a woman of 70 years, was folding clean, lavender-scented cashmere in my bedroom, when I heard Julian's heavy, roaring footsteps storm through the house like a relentless hurricane. "Mother, where are you?" His voice echoed, laced with a venom I hadn't heard since his most rebellious teenage years. I placed the shirt on the bed and stepped into the hallway. Julian, my only son, now 42 years old, stood in the center of my living room. His face was flushed crimson, his fists clenched tightly. His blue-green eyes, which he inherited from my late husband Robert, pierced me with a cold, terrifying hardness. Why did Seraphina call me crying, saying you changed the password on your card? She was standing at the grocer's counter and was humiliated in front of everyone. You brought shame upon her. I stood frozen in the doorway. 70 years of life had taught me a disciplined calm in difficult situations, but this felt inherently different. This was my own son, screaming at me, disrespecting my sanctuary. "Julian, lower your voice. We are educated people." My tone was firm, yet intentionally serene. "And yes, I changed the password on my card because it is mine. It is my sole property. Yours? Mother, we are family. You cannot simply put up barriers when we are in a moment of need." He took 2 deliberate steps toward me, and for the first time in my life, I felt a knot of pure dread twist in my stomach. "The card is in my name, Julian. It is my money. My life savings. Your money? Seriously? Are you going to be so incredibly selfish?" Seraphina was only buying necessities for the household. Food, cleaning supplies, normal things a family needs to survive. I knew with absolute certainty that his statement was a carefully crafted lie. I had painstakingly reviewed my statements just last week. The figures swam behind my eyes. $400 for a designer luxury perfume, $600 for an extravagant pair of Italian leather shoes, and a mysterious flight booking totaling $700 to a resort town. But I chose not to introduce that concrete evidence yet. "Son, if you need funds for a specific necessary item, we can discuss it like rational adults. But I am no longer going to leave my credit card without proper security for just anyone to use." "Just anyone? You are calling my wife just anyone? Her your daughter-in-law? She is an integral part of this family." His voice scaled another pitch of fury. I carefully sat down in my favorite armchair, the very one where I had rocked Julian as an infant 4 decades ago. I desperately needed to anchor my composure, even though my entire frame was silently trembling. "Seraphina is always welcome under this roof, Julian, but my credit card is not, and never has been, a communal family resource." Julian began to pace the living room like a predator in a cage. His expensive leather shoes pounded the polished oak floor with an aggressive rhythm. He was visibly sweating despite the crisp air conditioning unit humming steadily above us. "I cannot believe what I am hearing. You have been the portrait of generosity your entire life, always helping everyone you met. And now that your own immediate family requires necessary support, you are acting like a miser." That word, that single cruel accusation, hurt me more deeply than any scream. Miser. I, who had raised this man alone after his father died suddenly. I, who had worked double and triple shifts for countless years to ensure his college tuition was paid in full. I, who had lovingly provided the down payment for his first apartment, which I never expected him to repay. Julian, I absolutely will not permit you to speak to me in such a degrading manner within my own home. Then provide me with a coherent, logical explanation. He retorted. Why change the password overnight without informing anyone? I slowly rose from the armchair. My old back protested the sudden movement, but I needed to be standing, on my feet, to deliver the crushing truth. Because I reviewed my bank statements, and I found expenses that I simply do not recognize. A significant amount of my money has been leaving my card without my express verbal authorization. All of those expenses were thoroughly discussed with you, Mother. You agreed to them. No, Julian, they were not. That is the first lie you have uttered. He fell completely silent for the first time since his arrival. His breathing was labored, and the veins in his neck visibly strained against his dark skin. "Seraphina told me she always asked you before she used the card. For any purpose," he insisted, his voice faltering slightly. "Seraphina is lying." The words left my lips with a quiet, icy finality. The ensuing silence was thick and overwhelmingly heavy. Julian stared at me as though I had just physically struck him across the face. "I will not tolerate you insulting my wife." "I am not insulting her. I am simply telling the truth as documented by the bank. The truth," he spat, "is that you are becoming paranoid. Perhaps it is high time someone else took over the full management of your finances." The implication of those words hit me like a physical bolt of lightning. My own son, suggesting I was mentally incapable of managing the money I had earned through decades of painful sacrifice. My own son, casting doubt upon my cognitive capacity. "I think you need to leave now, Julian." "I am not leaving until this is resolved. Give me the new password right now." "No, son. My answer is no." I held his furious gaze without wavering. "This is my house, and this is my decision. If Seraphina needs anything, she can contact me directly." Julian stomped toward the front door, but paused before wrenching it open. His voice, when he finally spoke again, was colder than glacial ice. "This is far from over. We will have another discussion when you overcome this ridiculous tantrum." "It is not a tantrum, Julian. It is a necessary decision to protect my future. It is foolish, and you are going to deeply regret how this regrettable action affects our precious mother-son relationship." His words hung in the air like an ugly, poisonous threat. My own son, threatening to sever our familial ties unless I granted him unfettered access to my savings. "Are you attempting to threaten me, Julian? I am warning you. Seraphina is tremendously hurt by your sudden attitude. I don't know if she will ever want to see you again after this display. Then that will be entirely her decision to make." Julian shook his head with utter contempt. "You know what, Mother? You are absolutely correct. This is your decision, and we will now proceed to make ours." The oak door slammed shut with a devastating final thud. I was left alone in the living room, shaking uncontrollably. The silence that followed felt different after his departure. It was no longer the peaceful quiet of the morning, but something denser, heavier, as if the very atmosphere had been poisoned by his malice. 40 years of devoted motherhood, and it had culminated in this, my only child screaming at me for the simple act of protecting my own money. I walked to the window and watched Julian's black sedan squeal away from the curb, tires burning rubber as he took the corner far too fast. I sat back down and closed my eyes. The conversation played in my mind like a broken record. Julian's words, his tone, his calculated fury, all for a single password. Yet, in the deepest part of my heart, I knew this was never truly about a password. It was entirely about control. It was about establishing firm boundaries. It was about the simple, undeniable fact that for the first time in far too long, I had finally said no. The phone rang twice, its shrill noise piercing the toxic silence of my home. I let the answering machine capture the message. It was Seraphina, her voice artificially high-pitched, cutting through the silence like a dull knife. "Eleanor, I know you are there. I truly hope you are happy with the destructive chaos you have created. Julian is devastated. I simply cannot comprehend why you are behaving this way toward us. We are your family, your only support." Click. The line went dead with a decisive finality. The clock on the wall read 3:30 in the afternoon. The day had begun with the mundane task of folding laundry and watering my beloved hydrangeas. Now it felt as though I had survived an entire agonizing week in the span of just 2 hours. I got up and walked toward the kitchen. I was not truly hungry, but I desperately needed the comforting, familiar routine of working with my hands. Cooking had always been my singular refuge during times of profound difficulty. As I began to peel potatoes for a late, lonely lunch, I couldn't stop replaying Julian's expression. The anger in his eyes was familiar, a trait he inherited from his father's temper, but the coldness was completely new. It was as if he had looked right through me and conclusively decided that I was no longer worthy of his respect, but only of his scorn. But that harrowing, sunny afternoon was merely the insidious beginning of the true nightmare that was unfolding. For 30 years, routine had been my unshakable strength. I would rise at 6 in the morning, brew coffee in the same beloved ceramic machine Robert had gifted me before his untimely death, and check on my garden while the morning sun slowly warmed the terracotta tiles. It was an organized, predictable, and utterly safe life. After Robert's funeral, when Julian was only 12 years old, I learned that strict structure was the only thing that kept us sane and whole. Mealtimes, study times, bedtimes, clear rules and firm boundaries. That is how we would raise a good, honorable man, I thought in my grief. My stately 2-story house, built of sturdy brick and mortar, had been our secure refuge for 4 decades. Robert and I bought it when I was pregnant with Julian, paying off the mortgage over 2 decades of unrelenting work. Every single room held a story. Every corner was steeped in precious memories. The sun-drenched backyard where Julian learned to take his first awkward steps. The expansive kitchen where I prepared literally thousands of family meals. The elegant living room where we celebrated every birthday, every small milestone. The neighbors knew me simply as the kind woman who always made time to help. When poor Mrs. Carter fell ill, I diligently brought her nourishing meals for 2 straight months. When the Perez family's son required money for college books, I cheerfully lent them $500 without ever charging a cent of interest. Generosity had always been my silent way of honoring Robert's enduring memory. Julian was, for the most part, a good son, studious, outwardly respectful, and affectionate. When he turned 25 and secured his first job as a corporate accountant, I swelled with pride. My years of sacrifice had been unequivocally worthwhile. For years, we functioned as a perfect team. He expertly handled my tax filings. I cooked for him every Sunday. We visited each other regularly, maintaining a healthy, comfortable distance. Everything, however, changed irrevocably when he introduced me to Seraphina. The first time he brought her to the house, I was innocently preparing my famous mac and cheese in the kitchen. Julian walked in with a brilliant, blinding smile I hadn't witnessed since his teenage years, holding the hand of a thin, willowy blonde woman with immaculately manicured nails and an ensemble of clothes that cost more than my meager monthly retirement income. "Mother," he announced grandly, "this is Seraphina, the true woman of my life." Seraphina flashed me a blindingly perfect, white-toothed smile, but her penetrating eyes assessed me from head to toe, as though I were an inconvenient, easily dismissible obstacle she needed to navigate or remove. Her handshake was firm but notably icy. "It is a genuine pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Johnson. Julian talks about you constantly." During dinner, Seraphina relentlessly praised my cooking, asked overly specific questions about my small rose garden, and showed a surprisingly intense interest in our framed family photos. She appeared genuinely motivated to fully integrate herself into our established lives. When they left that night, I convinced myself that I had been blessed with a wonderful, supportive daughter-in-law. The next few visits were just as artificially pleasant. Seraphina never failed to bring me an ostentatious bouquet of flowers. She offered to help me wash the dishes, and she regaled me with amusing, harmless stories about her high-pressure job at an expensive clothing boutique downtown. Julian appeared undeniably happy, and that ultimately was the only thing that truly mattered to me, the wedding, which I had secretly hoped would be a small, intimate affair, was instead large and excessively elegant. I paid for over half of the exorbitant expenses without them even needing to ask. He was my only son, my only precious chance to ever host a groom's mother's reception. Seraphina meticulously chose absolutely everything: the dress, the countless floral arrangements, the 17-course menu, and the live orchestra. I simply signed the endless checks and smiled obligingly for the camera. For the initial months of their marriage, the established Sunday visits continued without a hitch. Julian and Seraphina would come over for a lavish lunch, tell me excitedly about their new life together, and I truly enjoyed having his constant presence nearby. The house felt full again, just as it had when Julian was a boy. The first favors, as they politely called them, began innocently enough. Eleanor, could you possibly lend us some money? We are exceptionally tight this month with our apartment expenses. Seraphina addressed me in a sweet, almost timid voice, a stark contrast to her assertive presence. It's only $200. We promise to pay you back by Friday, without fail. I readily gave them the money without a second thought. It was only $200. I had enough retirement savings, and they were merely starting their life together. It was perfectly normal for young couples to encounter minor financial difficulties in the beginning. Friday arrived punctually, but the promised repayment did not. Instead, a new larger request arrived. Mother, could you possibly lend us $300 more? Seraphina desperately needs professional clothes for her new promotion. And I don't receive my performance bonus until next month. $300, then $500, then increasingly more. Always accompanied by the identical empty promise, we will pay you back soon. Always with the same tiresome excuse. We are just a little tight this particular month. After 6 months of this escalating pattern, my outstanding loans to them totaled nearly $5,000. When I gently brought up the topic during a relaxed Sunday lunch, Julian grew visibly uncomfortable, shifting awkwardly in his seat. Mother, you know with absolute certainty that we are going to pay you back. I truly don't understand why you are keeping such exact petty accounts, he chastised me. We are family. Of course, we are family, son, I countered gently. But $5,000 is not a trifling sum. Seraphina smoothly intervened with her most practiced, charming smile. Eleanor, you are absolutely right. We have been incredibly careless with the repayment schedule. How about we temporarily give you my credit card as a collateral guarantee? I did not want her credit card. I wanted my hard-earned money back. But I reluctantly accepted her strange offer, purely because I had no clear idea how to effectively negotiate solid boundaries with my own family. A week later, Seraphina called me with an artificially desperate, frantic voice. Eleanor, I have a massive emergency. My card is mysteriously blocked, and I urgently need to buy extremely expensive medicine for my poor, sick mother. Can I possibly borrow yours for just today? I lent her my card. Just for one day, I reasoned. Just for life-saving medicine. That night, I checked my bank statement online. $150 at the local pharmacy. Perfect, I thought with relief. But then I noticed several other unrelated charges. $80 for obscure cosmetics, $200 for clothing, $30 at a high-end, exclusive sushi restaurant. When I tentatively confronted Seraphina the next day, she immediately apologized with theatrical tears streaming down her face. I am so deeply sorry, Eleanor. I was at the mall to pick up the prescription, and I saw some utterly incredible sales. I simply thought it would be all right to use it. I promise I will pay you back the total amount tomorrow. She did not repay the total amount tomorrow, or the next week, or the following month. But she never ceased asking to use my card for new, sudden emergencies. The emergency for her sister's lavish birthday gift, the emergency for the expensive shoes she absolutely needed for a wedding, the emergency for Julian's anniversary gift. Always emergencies, always urgent and immediate. Always accompanied by false promises of immediate full repayment. After one long year, I had lost any realistic count of how much money had vanished from my card. My life savings were dwindling rapidly, month after painful month. But every single time I attempted to bring up the subject, Julian immediately made me feel acutely guilty and shamefully small. Mother, I truly don't understand why you are so petty with us. You have more than enough money saved, and we are simply trying to get ahead in life. Petty? That word was permanently etched into my mind for agonizing weeks. The Sunday visits grew noticeably tense and uncomfortable. I would dutifully cook, they would ravenously eat, but the conversation inevitably revolved around money, bills they couldn't possibly pay, unexpected major expenses, incredible life-changing opportunities they were constantly missing out on due to a lack of immediate cash. If only we could afford a better, newer car, I could easily secure a more professional job, Seraphina would complain, twirling her hair while absently tapping on her brand-new, top-of-the-line smartphone. If only we could move to a much nicer neighborhood. We would instantly have a better quality of life and better connections, Julian would add emphatically, as he served himself a generous third portion of my nourishing stew. I listened in strained silence, knowing with profound certainty that their casual complaints were simply indirect, thinly veiled requests for more and more money. One bleak afternoon, while diligently reviewing my most recent bank statements, I realized something that sent an Arctic chill straight to the marrow of my bones. In the last 6 months alone, I had deliberately spent far more money than I was earning from my modest retirement fund. My entire life savings were systematically evaporating to finance Julian and Seraphina's increasingly luxurious, unsustainable lifestyle. I couldn't sleep that terrifying night. I stayed awake until the first pale light of dawn, feverishly calculating how much money I had truly lost, how much they actually owed me, and precisely how much longer I could possibly sustain this agonizing situation before I was financially ruined and destitute. For the first time in 30 long years, my comforting morning routine brought me absolutely no solace. The coffee tasted bitter and stale, the plants in the garden seemed wilted and gray, and the pervasive silence of my house felt like a final, devastating sentence. Something had to fundamentally change, but I had no conceivable idea how to confront my own family without utterly destroying the fragile relationship we had desperately tried to maintain. The ensuing months became a slow, excruciating torture comprised of small, inconsequential lies and monumental, heartbreaking financial losses. Every single week brought a new fabricated emergency. Every alleged emergency required the use of my card, and every use of my card invariably escalated into a cascade of unauthorized, excessive expenses. Eleanor, I desperately need your card to buy urgent medicine for Julian. He has a sudden severe infection and requires extremely expensive, imported antibiotics, Seraphina would tell me in a voice deliberately laced with worry and concern. An hour later, my phone would instantly receive multiple electronic notifications of $400 in purchases at an upscale women's clothing boutique, followed by a separate charge of $100 at an exclusive hair salon. When I confronted her, she always possessed an instantaneous, plausible explanation. Oh, I forgot to mention, I also required new professional work attire. Mine are terribly outdated, and Julian constantly complains about my lack of style. The $400? It was an extraordinary limited-time sale. 3 designer items for the price of 1. I simply couldn't possibly pass up such an incredible opportunity, could I? There was always a convenient justification, always a seemingly logical reason why the additional unplanned expense was deemed absolutely necessary, utterly intelligent, or tragically inevitable. And I, who had raised a son I believed to be strictly honest, was beginning to severely doubt my own memory and perception of reality. The dreaded Sunday visits rapidly devolved into uncomfortable, protracted financial review sessions. Seraphina would arrive armed with a mental running list of future, unavoidable expenses that urgently required my immediate financial support. Julian's cousin, Clarissa, is getting married next month in the Bahamas. We desperately need brand new, appropriate attire for the elaborate ceremony. Julian's cousin. I knew my son better than anyone else alive. He was an only child. Clarissa was barely a distant acquaintance, certainly not a figure of great importance to him. Julian would simply nod obligingly, never once lifting his gaze from his plate of food. His silence had become deeply complicit. I need $500 for a gown and matching shoes, Seraphina continued, her voice demanding, not asking. I absolutely cannot show up looking shabby or common. His family is exceedingly elegant and judgmental. $500 for a distant cousin's wedding, which I was not invited to, simply to impress a circle of people I did not know or care about. But whenever I tried to firmly refuse the request, Julian would immediately intervene with his new, devastating strategy, emotional guilt. Mother, you simply don't comprehend how critically important this is for our professional lives. We are diligently building a powerful social reputation. My very job as an accountant depends heavily on the valuable connections I make at these exclusive events. His job, working as a mid-level accountant at a small regional firm, did not depend on any lofty social connections whatsoever. But I no longer possessed the energy or the emotional bandwidth to argue with them without sounding exactly like the miserable, stingy old woman they relentlessly accused me of being. One cold Thursday afternoon, while I was carefully pruning the roses in my back garden, I received a chilling call from my bank's fraud department. "Mrs. Johnson, we are calling to specifically confirm an extremely unusual purchase on your credit card, a $1,200 transaction at a high-end electronics superstore. Can you definitively confirm that you personally authorized this large expense? $1,200. An electronics store. I had not purchased any electronics. At which specific store was the purchase made exactly? At Tech Haven in the City Mall. Do you authorize this transaction, ma'am? No, I absolutely do not authorize that purchase. Please cancel that suspicious transaction immediately and block my card completely. Kindly send me a new replacement card in 5 business days." I slowly hung up the phone, my hands visibly trembling. $1,200. Seraphina had borrowed my card just Tuesday, claiming she needed to buy medicine for a severe migraine. The phone rang again 20 minutes later. "Eleanor, what in the world did you just do? My card is blocked, and I am standing in the middle of the grocery store with a huge overflowing cart of food. It is not your card, Seraphina. It is my card. And I blocked it specifically because there were several unauthorized purchases." Unauthorized purchases? All of the purchases I made were entirely necessary. Was $1,200 for a virtual reality headset necessary, Seraphina? Silence, then a nervous, forced laugh. "Oh, that. Julian desperately needed a new work computer. His old one spontaneously broke down, and he simply could not wait a moment longer. It was a complete professional emergency. Why didn't you consult with me before making such a massive, non-emergency purchase? Because we knew, with absolute certainty, that you would automatically say no. You always magically find excuses not to help us when we genuinely need something important." The accusation struck me with a vicious force, leaving me breathless. I, who had been single-handedly financing their increasingly luxurious lifestyle for 2 solid years, was now the villain, the enemy, for simply protecting the financial security of my own future. "Seraphina, go home now. We will discuss this when you are present here." "I cannot possibly go home. My cart is full of expensive food and I have no other means to pay for it. You need to come here right now and bring cash." I hung up the phone. For the next hour, my phone incessantly rang. Seraphina, Julian, Seraphina again. I allowed all the calls to transfer straight to the answering machine. I needed time to think clearly. I retrieved all my bank statements from the last 6 months and spread them out meticulously across my large dining room table. The cold, hard numbers did not lie. In January, I had a savings balance of $45,000. By June, an appalling $26,000 had simply vanished. I reviewed every single transaction, every single charge, every single purchase receipt. Expensive, trendy restaurants, designer clothing, imported perfumes, high-end shoes, costly handbags, luxurious beauty treatments, lavish weekend trips. Absolutely nothing that Seraphina had purchased with my money was a basic necessity for survival. The loud, insistent sound of my front door being wrenched open violently startled me from my calculations. Julian and Seraphina stormed into my house without bothering to knock, behaving as if they owned the property outright. "Mother, what exactly happened with the card?" Julian looked more emotionally exhausted than actively angry. "I blocked it because I discovered purchases I did not authorize." Seraphina brazenly sat down on my sofa without the courtesy of an invitation, her arms tightly crossed in a defiant, challenging expression. "Eleanor, all of those purchases were meticulously discussed with you. You cannot simply block the card every time you conveniently forget something." "I did not forget anything, Seraphina. A $1,200 virtual reality headset is far too large an amount to not consult with me beforehand. I did consult you. I told you Julian urgently needed new equipment for his work? No, you did not. You explicitly told me you needed money only for medicine." Julian sighed theatrically and sank into the armchair opposite me. "Mother, Sometimes emergencies evolve and change rapidly. Yes, Seraphina needed the medicine, but when she arrived at the electronics store, they were having an incredible, one-time-only sale. She couldn't possibly miss that opportunity. An incredible sale of $1,200? The equipment normally costs $2,000. It was a genuine bargain. I stared directly at him. My son, whom I had painstakingly raised to be fundamentally honest and socially responsible, was now shamelessly justifying an impulsive purchase of over $1,000 as if it were the most normal, expected thing in the world. Julian, that purchase was not an emergency. It was a blatant luxury. It is not a luxury. It is a critical work tool. Then pay for it using your own work money. Seraphina stood up from the sofa with exaggerated dramatic flair. I knew with absolute certainty that you would react precisely like this. You always magically find a way to make us feel deeply ashamed for simply asking for a little help. I am not trying to make you feel ashamed. I merely want you to finally respect my money and my boundaries. Your money is always, perpetually your money. We are family, Eleanor. Family money is meant to be shared by the entire family unit. My money is mine, Seraphina. I worked 40 painful years to earn and save it. Julian stood up and began pacing the entire length of the living room. Mother, we completely understand your point, but you also need to try to understand ours. We are fighting tooth and nail to grow professionally, to establish a better, more secure life. Your financial support is absolutely fundamental to that goal. I have been supporting you for 2 continuous years, Julian. I have already spent over $25,000 on your lifestyle. $25,000? Seraphina sounded genuinely offended, as if I were wildly exaggerating. We have certainly not spent that exorbitant amount. I pointed to the papers meticulously spread out across the table. The statements are laid out right here. See for yourselves. Neither of them made any move toward the table. Neither of them wished to confirm the real, horrifying numbers. The fundamental point, Julian continued, completely ignoring my evidence, is that we need to know we can consistently count on you. Blocking the card without any warning whatsoever puts us in deeply humiliating, socially awkward situations. Humiliating? Yes, Mother. Humiliating! Do you have any idea how Seraphina felt when your card was coldly declined in front of everyone at the grocery store? It is not her card, Julian. It is the family card. Those words intensely resonated in my mind. The family card. My private, personal savings had been unilaterally converted into community property without my knowledge or consent. I think I need some time alone now to think clearly. Time to think about what exactly? Seraphina sounded aggressively impatient. If you are going to continue lending us your card? Of course you are going to continue lending it to us, Julian asserted, genuinely surprised that any alternative was even a remote possibility. We are your family. I stood up from the chair and walked slowly toward the large bay window. My garden looked breathtaking under the late afternoon sun. The vibrant red begonias were blooming profusely. The pure white geraniums were growing strong and tall. The hardy bougainvillea was diligently climbing the stone fence. Everything I had nurtured with my own 2 hands was robustly thriving. Why couldn't my fragile relationship with my son be just as beautiful and healthy? I want both of you to leave my home for today, I stated, my back still facing them. Mother, please. I need to be completely alone. I heard their footsteps begrudgingly moving toward the door. Before he exited, Julian paused. We sincerely hope you will reconsider your unreasonable position. We absolutely do not want this financial issue to negatively affect our relationship. The door closed softly this time. There were no more slamming sounds or angry screams, just the muffled, heartbreaking sound of my dreams of a perfect, unified family slowly crumbling into dust, a certain age. The phrase hung suspended in the charged atmosphere, sounding less like a compassionate observation and more like a subtle, calculated threat. What exactly do you mean by that insinuation, Seraphina? I asked, my voice dangerously level. Nothing sinister, of course. It's simply that sometimes older individuals tend to worry excessively over minor, insignificant things. They can become a little paranoid. Paranoid? The same damaging word Julian had thrown at me just days ago. Paranoid for the simple, reasonable act of wanting to control my own credit card. Paranoid for thinking your own family is actively stealing from you. The words left her lips with such casual, terrifying ease that it took me a long, uncomfortable moment to fully process their shocking impact. Stealing. She had actually used the loaded word, stealing. Who precisely said anything at all about stealing? I challenged her. You did, Eleanor, with your aggressive actions. Blocking the card, frantically requesting detailed transaction reports, treating us both like common criminals. What is that, if not a direct accusation of theft? I stood up abruptly from the sofa. I urgently required physical distance from the suffocating, manipulative energy of this conversation. Seraphina, I simply want my card back now. Of course. Here it is. She finally, reluctantly pushed the plastic card across the coffee table toward me. I quickly retrieved it and tucked it securely into the deep pocket of my blouse. But Eleanor, she continued, her voice resuming its soft, deceptive purr, I sincerely hope you fully understand that this will inevitably make things much more complicated for everyone involved. Every single time we have an unexpected emergency, we will be forced to bother you repeatedly. Every time we desperately need something urgent, you will have to go far out of your way to physically help us. That is perfectly fine. I am prepared to handle that responsibility. Are you truly certain? Because sometimes, emergencies suddenly happen at extremely odd hours. Sometimes we urgently need things when you are sound asleep, or when you are simply unable to leave your house, or perhaps are unwell. Was she truly attempting to threaten me? Or was she merely outlining plausible, inconvenient scenarios? We will diligently handle each unavoidable situation as it arises, I stated firmly. Seraphina nodded slowly, her expression deeply sullen. Okay, Eleanor, if that is genuinely what you desire. She stood up to leave the room. I just sincerely hope that you don't live to regret this decision when you see how complicated and difficult everything is inevitably going to become. I escorted her silently to the front door. Before stepping outside, she turned back to face me, her eyes filling with a single, perfectly timed tear. You know what the saddest part of this entire situation is, Eleanor? That after 2 continuous years of treating you exactly like my own mother, you now view me as a complete stranger. That deeply hurts, you know. For one fleeting, dangerous moment, I almost allowed myself to feel the crippling weight of guilt. Almost. I do not view you as a stranger, Seraphina. I view you as my son's wife, and while you may be family, my hard-earned money fundamentally remains mine. She nodded sadly one final time and quietly exited my house. That night, sleep utterly eluded me. Seraphina's insidious words played mercilessly in my mind. Was I truly becoming paranoid? Was it pathologically abnormal for a 70-year-old woman to insist on fully controlling her own life savings? Or was I genuinely transforming into a distrustful, fragile old woman? I retrieved the photographic copy of my card that I had discovered hidden in the lockbox. I studied the image carefully under the harsh glare of my bedside lamp. It was a perfect, clear, and fully usable copy. Someone had planned this entire scenario with meticulous, calculated effort, and then, with a crushing finality, I understood the absolute truth. I was not losing my mind or becoming paranoid. I had simply been too profoundly trusting. But I had no knowledge that the absolute worst was still, terrifyingly, yet to come. On Monday morning, the comprehensive, detailed bank report arrived via certified secure mail. 5 dense pages of transactions that told the complete, unambiguous story of precisely how I had lost $25,000 in just 2 short years. Every single purchase was documented with an exact date, a precise time, a clear location, and the precise amount. It was like reading the private diary of a disastrous life that was emphatically not mine. I sat down at the dining room table with a steaming mug of black coffee and began the systematic study of each line item. What I immediately found was enough to make me feel physically ill. There were numerous transactions recorded at times when I was definitively asleep in my bed. Large purchases made at upscale stores I had never once visited. substantial expenses charged in distant cities I had never traveled to, and, most disturbingly, multiple substantial cash withdrawals recorded from various ATMs at the deeply inconvenient hour of 3:00 in the morning. How had someone possibly withdrawn cash from my bank account at 3:00 in the morning when I was sound asleep in my house? I immediately dialed Julian's cell phone number. I desperately needed a concrete explanation before my terrified mind conjured up theories that I vehemently refused to contemplate. "Hello, Mother." "I'm busy. Julian, how are you? I need to ask you something critically important." "Sure. What's the major crisis now?" "My credit card has been actively used when I was definitively not present with it." There was a long, pointed pause on the line. "What exactly do you mean by that statement, Mother?" "I mean it was used without my express knowledge while I was physically at home. Large sums were taken. Mother, you gave both of us verbal permission to use the card solely for emergencies. Sometimes emergencies simply do not wait for convenient business hours." Money was withdrawn in cash from various ATMs at 3:00 in the morning. Oh, that was only one single time. We urgently needed cash for a taxi after a late dinner party. We were out exceptionally late and simply didn't have any money on us. One time? The certified bank report states it happened 6 consecutive times in the last 3 months alone. "Mother?" His tone instantly became defensive and sharply impatient. "I am not going to maintain a detailed minute-by-minute log of every single emergency and report it back to you as if we are still children. Julian, these were 6 individual withdrawals of $300 each. That totals $1,800 in pure cash. They were all for legitimate, necessary expenses. I simply do not understand why you have suddenly started treating us like hardened criminals." "I am not treating you like criminals. I just want to fully understand precisely how my money was spent and where it went." "You know what? Just forget the entire proposal, Mother. Forget the allowance, forget everything." "Julian, no, please!" The line went dead before I could finish my sentence. I was left clutching the phone receiver, my stomach churning violently. I absolutely did not want another devastating confrontation, but I now knew, with bleak certainty, that it was utterly unavoidable. While I tensely waited for their imminent arrival, I continued to meticulously review the certified report. I suddenly found something truly shocking that made me feel physically sick. 2 simultaneous transactions recorded in 2 completely different geographical locations. A large purchase at an expensive 5-star restaurant, recorded at the exact same moment as a massive purchase at a high-end clothing store 12 miles away, was a physical impossibility for one single person. To have executed those 2 separate purchases at the same time, this could only mean one devastating thing. They had secretly made additional working copies of my card. 40 excruciating minutes later, Julian and Seraphina entered my house. This time, they did not even bother to ring the doorbell. They brazenly used the spare key I had foolishly given them for genuine emergencies years ago. "Mother, we have to talk now," Julian declared, before even sitting down. Seraphina looked noticeably different, less artificially conciliatory, and much more cold and determined. She sat directly opposite me, her arms tightly crossed in an aggressive posture. "Eleanor, this entire situation is spiraling completely out of our control," she began, her voice low and menacing. "Your relentless suspicions, your constant accusations, your obsessive, minute-by-minute review of every single expense. It is not normal behavior. It is not normal to want to know precisely how my own life savings are being systematically spent. It is certainly not normal to treat your only family as if they are professional scammers and thieves," Julian interjected angrily. I carefully placed the certified bank report sheets onto the coffee table between us. "Then please explain this to me," I challenged them. 2 distinct purchases, executed at the exact same time, in 2 completely different physical locations. Julian snatched the sheets and quickly scanned the damning evidence. "What purchases are you referring to now?" "Friday, April the 15th. A $200 purchase at the Grand Table restaurant at 8:00 in the evening. Simultaneously, at the exact same moment, a $300 purchase was recorded at Elegance Boutique." Seraphina and Julian exchanged a rapid, silent glance that spoke volumes of rehearsed collusion. "Oh, that," Seraphina said instantly, without missing a beat, her voice perfectly natural. "I was at the restaurant, and Julian was buying me a huge surprise birthday gift at the boutique at the same exact time. We used both cards simultaneously so I wouldn't accidentally find out about the expensive surprise." "Both cards? Your card and my card?" Julian quickly elaborated. "Yes, but my card mysteriously got blocked that particular day, so I was forced to use yours for the gift purchase as well. It was only temporary." The explanation sounded meticulously rehearsed, far too perfect, too instantaneous. But I had no concrete way to definitively prove their undeniable lie. "How many copies of my card actually exist, Julian?" "Copies?" Seraphina feigned genuine confusion. "What in the world are you talking about now, Eleanor?" I dramatically produced the physical, photographic copy I had discovered hidden in my lockbox. "This copy, with your sloppy handwriting scrawled on the bottom corner?" Seraphina took the copy and studied it carefully, examining it as if she were seeing the damning evidence for the very first time in her life. "Oh yes. I created this copy months ago so I would always have the correct numbers on file in case I ever lost the original card during an emergency." "Is that illegal or wrong somehow? Did you create any other working copies?" "No, of course not. Why would I need to? To execute simultaneous purchases in two completely different locations." Julian instantly stood up from his chair. "Mother, stop this obsessive questioning now. We simply cannot tolerate these ridiculous accusations anymore." "They are hurting us deeply." "They are not accusations, Julian. They are perfectly legitimate, critical questions about the security and usage of my own money. They are accusations of criminal fraud. You are openly accusing us of common theft." "I just want the simple, unvarnished truth." Seraphina stood up as well and took a step closer to me. "Eleanor, do you have any idea how deeply painful this is for us? Do you truly know how it feels when your own mother-in-law assumes you are a thief?" Her eyes immediately filled with artificial tears. But this time, the calculated tears did not move me in the slightest. "I just want the truth, Seraphina. The truth is that you are rapidly becoming paranoid." Julian suddenly yelled, his composure finally breaking. "The truth is that every single time we desperately need your help, you maliciously make us feel like hardened criminals." "The truth is," Seraphina continued, her voice now shaky with forced emotion, "we are seriously considering distancing ourselves from you completely until you agree to get professional medical help." "Professional help?" "Yes, Mother." Julian calmed his voice slightly, adopting a falsely reasonable tone. "I genuinely believe you should consult a doctor immediately. These sudden personality changes, this rampant paranoia, this deep-seated distrust of your own family, it is simply not normal or healthy behavior. My personality has not fundamentally changed. I am simply protecting my money." "Your personality has absolutely changed," Seraphina insisted, her voice rising again. "Before you were kind, generous, loving. You implicitly trusted us. Now you are cold, suspicious, and downright stingy. Stingy for refusing to simply give away $25,000? "It has not been $25,000. Julian protested vehemently. I collected all the thick bank statements and spread them widely across the entire table's surface. "The precise numbers are right here. Count them for yourselves." Neither of them even glanced down at the damning papers. "I will not participate in this obsessive need of yours to keep an exact, humiliating account of every single favor you have done for us." Julian said, his jaw tight. "Favors? $25,000 are favors?" "Yes, they are favors, freely given from a mother to her only son. It is what normal, functional families do for each other. Normal, functional families do not secretly hide working copies of their mother's credit cards." Seraphina quickly snatched the physical photocopy from the table. "Do you want me to destroy it right now? Will that make you feel better?" She viciously tore the paper into dozens of small pieces and let them flutter dramatically onto the table. "There, are you happy now, Eleanor? How many other copies did you secretly make, Seraphina?" "None. I did not make any other copies, I swear to you." Then explain the late-night cash withdrawals that only someone with a physical card could execute. I have already explained the late-night withdrawals. Julian approached me and gently placed his hand upon my shoulder, a gesture that felt deeply repulsive. Mother, this entire toxic cycle has to stop now. You are absolutely destroying our family relationship over mere money. I am not destroying it. I am merely protecting it. Protecting it from whom? From us? Protecting my financial security. Your money is not in any danger with us, Eleanor, Seraphina said, her voice dripping with artificial reassurance. My money is definitively in grave danger with you. Do you have any realistic idea how many elderly people your age lose their entire life savings by making seriously wrong, foolish decisions? Wrong decisions like trusting you, I whispered back, my voice laced with sorrow. Wrong decisions like suddenly isolating yourself completely from your own family because of irrational paranoia. Julian immediately removed his hand from my shoulder. Mother, I am going to make you one final proposal. Give us one last, definitive chance to prove that we are entirely worthy of your trust. Give us full access to your card for one more month. If, at the end of that 30-day period, you are not entirely satisfied with how responsibly we have managed the expenses, we promise we will never ask you for money again. Ever. Seraphina nodded her head vigorously. It is an absolutely excellent, fair idea. We will clearly show you that you can rely on and trust us completely. I looked at them both, my son and my daughter-in-law, begging me for one final opportunity to prove their honesty. It sounded superficially reasonable. It sounded exactly like something a normal, loving family would do for each other. But something deep in their eyes, a flicker of desperation, a barely suppressed rage, told me that this was not a simple, humble request. It was an insidious demand, thinly disguised as a final favor. I desperately need some time alone now to think this critical decision over. Time to think about what precisely, Mother? Whether you can finally trust your own flesh and blood family? Time to conclusively decide if I am making a monumental mistake. Julian sighed loudly and dramatically. Fine, take your time. But in the meantime, we are also going to take some serious time away from you. What does that ominous statement mean, Julian? It means that until you conclusively decide to trust us again, we are going to maintain a strict distance. We refuse to continue feeling like common criminals every single time we come to visit you. They abruptly headed for the door. Before stepping outside, Seraphina turned back to face me, her expression dangerously cold. I hope that when you finally reconsider all of this, you realize that we are truly the only reliable family you have left. Without family, money is ultimately worthless. The door closed softly behind them, leaving me completely alone with the scattered papers on the table and the immense, unbearable weight of a decision I truly did not know how to make. Was I truly a paranoid, misguided mother destroying her entire family relationship over money? Or was I an astute older woman being systematically manipulated and financially preyed upon by her own flesh and blood? I honestly did not know which of the two terrifying possibilities truly scared me more than the other. For one long, agonizing week, I received no communication whatsoever from either Julian or Seraphina. The profound silence felt incredibly alien after 2 continuous years of incessant phone calls demanding money, surprise visits demanding access, and urgent, fabricated emergencies requiring my credit card. For the first time in an age, my phone did not ring every single day. Initially, the silence felt like a massive welcome relief. I was finally able to diligently water my plants without irritating interruptions, read my beloved mystery novel in complete peace, and cook for myself without the tiresome obligation of preparing extra, unwelcome portions. But after 5 long days, the silence began to feel precisely like a calculated punishment. Was this their insidious goal? To completely isolate me psychologically until I finally surrendered and conceded to their relentless financial demands? On Saturday morning, while I was meticulously organizing the deep recesses of my closet, I suddenly found something that made me freeze in my tracks. At the very bottom of the last drawer, carefully wrapped in a faded silk handkerchief, was the magnificent antique emerald locket that Robert had gifted me for our 10th wedding anniversary. I hadn't worn it or even thought about it for many years. I carefully took it out and held it up to catch the pale morning light filtering through the window. The brilliant green of the stones was still dazzling, perfect, and completely intact after so many years. I vividly remembered the night Robert first fastened it around my neck, his hands trembling slightly as he struggled with the tiny clasp. "For the strongest woman I know," he had whispered to me, his voice full of love, "so you never, ever forget your own inherent worth." My worth? When exactly had I begun to seriously doubt it? I made an immediate decision. I would put on the locket and leave the suffocating house. I desperately needed fresh air, new perspectives. I needed to interact with other people. I needed to powerfully remind myself that a complex, vibrant world existed far beyond this terrifying emotional and financial impasse with Julian and Seraphina. I drove to the downtown farmers market, the place where I had faithfully bought fresh vegetables for 20 continuous years. Mr. Garcia, the warm, jovial owner of the produce stand, greeted me instantly with his usual wrinkled, kind smile. "Mrs. Johnson, it is truly wonderful to see you out today. How have you been holding up?" "I've been, well, Mr. Garcia, a little emotionally drained and worried lately, but I am certainly fine." "Worried about what, specifically? Your health? Your beautiful garden? Your family?" He nodded slowly with deep understanding. "Families can be tremendously complicated. Mrs. Johnson, I have 5 grown children, and each one reliably presents me with a different, relentless headache." "Mr. Garcia," I began, suddenly feeling a surge of raw vulnerability. "Did you ever, even once, feel that your own children saw you solely as a deep, inexhaustible source of money?" Mr. Garcia stopped carefully arranging his tower of oranges and looked directly into my eyes. "Mrs. Johnson, are you currently going through a painful situation like that now? I honestly don't know if I am wildly overreacting or if this is truly happening to me. Do you want some truthful advice from an old man who has lived 75 full years, ma'am?" I nodded my head silently. When your own innate instincts tell you that something is profoundly wrong, you must listen to them immediately. A mother's instincts, especially in defense, never lie. His simple, profound words remained deeply embedded in my mind for the entire drive back home. A mother's instincts never lie. That afternoon, while I was absent-mindedly watering the red begonias, my phone unexpectedly rang. It was Julian. "Hello, Mother. How are you doing today?" "Hello, son. I am doing well, thank you." "And yourself?" "We've been doing an awful lot of intense thinking, Mother. Seraphina and I thoroughly discussed the entire situation, and we reached a firm conclusion." "What conclusion did you reach, Julian?" "That maybe, just maybe, you are right to want much tighter control over your money. That perhaps we have been far too casual and relaxed about the financial aspect of our relationship." I was genuinely taken aback. I had prepared myself for another attack, not this sudden surprising concession. "I am relieved and glad to hear that, Julian. So, we wish to propose something entirely different and fair. Instead of using your credit card, we would like you to simply provide us with a fixed cash amount every single month, like a necessary allowance. That way, you will know the exact, precise amount you are giving us, and we will know exactly what we can consistently count on." "An allowance, Julian?" "Yes. An amount that you, Mother, consider to be entirely reasonable for our combined monthly expenses. We were thinking perhaps $1,500 every month. $1,500 a month. That calculated out to $18,000 a year for expenses they deemed necessary." "Julian, $1,500 is a substantial sum of money. It is actually significantly less than we have spent on average over the past few months. We sincerely thought it would be a reasonable way to cut down on overall expenses and grant you the complete control you crave. Why do you urgently require $1,500 a month if you both work full-time jobs?" "Because we are actively trying to grow professionally. We require appropriate professional attire for work. We need to constantly maintain a certain necessary social standard. We need to invest heavily in our future, and our salaries are simply not adequate for all those demands. Mother, our salaries barely cover the apartment rent and basic food costs. Everything else requires additional substantial help. Then perhaps you should seriously consider reducing your current expenses. There was another long, heavy pause on the line. Do you truly want us to live like we are destitute and poor, Mother? I want you both to live comfortably, within your means. Our means inherently include having a wealthy mother who can easily help us to grow and prosper. I fail to understand why you suddenly want us to relentlessly struggle on our own when you possess the resources to effortlessly make our lives easier. Because they are not my lives to manage, Julian. They are fundamentally your lives to build. We are family. My life and your life are inextricably connected. His tone had changed again, rapidly reverting to the familiar aggressive territory. Julian, I am not going to give you $1,500 every month. That amount is simply unfeasible. How much then? $1,000? Just tell me the number. I don't know the right number yet. I need much more time to thoroughly think about this critical decision. Think about it, Mother. We have already patiently waited an entire week for an answer. And I have been spending money uncontrollably for 2 continuous years. I urgently require time to decide precisely how to proceed from here. You know what? Just forget the entire proposal, Mother. Forget the allowance, forget everything. Julian, no, please, no, Mother. We are not going to beg for your financial help anymore. Seraphina was completely right. There are indeed other options available to us. What other options are you talking about now, Julian? Options that do not require groveling and begging my own mother for access to her money. He abruptly hung up the phone before I could even formulate a response. That night, my sleep was tormented and shallow. What did he ominously mean by other options? What was Julian truly planning now? On Monday morning, I was violently forced to find out what Julian's other options truly entailed. I was quietly eating my breakfast cereal when a sharp, insistent knock rattled the front door. It was a young, impeccably dressed man in a tailored suit clutching a leather briefcase. Mrs. Eleanor Johnson? Yes, that is me. I am Mr. Roberts, from the prestigious law firm of Hazen and Associates. Your son, Julian Johnson, has retained our specialized services to conduct a preliminary review of your mental and financial capacity. I felt as if the solid floor had instantly dissolved beneath my feet. Excuse me, Mr. Roberts, you are talking about what exactly? Your son is profoundly concerned about your overall mental well-being, ma'am. According to his official statement, you have recently exhibited clear signs of paranoia, confusion, and highly erratic decision-making. He is currently considering formally initiating a legal process to obtain guardianship over all your financial assets. Guardianship. Yes, ma'am. A formal legal process where a circuit judge ultimately determines if you are fully capable of managing your own complex financial affairs, or if you urgently require someone else to completely handle them for you. Someone like my son? Exactly, ma'am. That is the established legal process. I stumbled weakly to the nearest armchair and sank into it, my legs unable to support the sudden, crushing weight of this realization. What exactly do I need to do now to actively defend myself against this process? Firstly, I strongly recommend you immediately hire a competent lawyer specializing in elder law. Secondly, you will certainly need to undergo a series of medical and psychological examinations to definitively prove your cognitive capacity. Thirdly, you must immediately gather substantial evidence that you manage your finances responsibly and astutely. How much time do I have before this process begins officially? If they decide to proceed formally with the court filing, you will receive an official court summons granting you only 30 days to adequately respond. The man left my house, leaving me completely alone with the horrifying, chilling realization that my own son was seriously considering legally seizing complete control of my money and my life. My own flesh and blood son. That traumatic afternoon, I immediately called my neighbor, Alma Davis. I had known her for 15 years, but we had never shared a truly intimate friendship. Still, I desperately needed to talk to another rational human being, and she had always struck me as a sensible, intelligent woman. Alma, could you possibly come over to my house right now? I urgently require your advice. Of course, Eleanor. I will be right there in 5 minutes. When she arrived, I tearfully recounted absolutely everything. The small loans that systematically became permanent gifts, the credit card they relentlessly refused to return, the shocking discovery of the unauthorized fraudulent purchases, and finally, the terrifying threat of legal guardianship. Alma listened patiently and silently, nodding occasionally, never once showing a hint of judgment. You know what I strongly believe, Eleanor? She finally said, her voice full of controlled rage. What, Alma? I strongly believe that your son and his greedy wife are systematically and calculatedly manipulating you. And now that you have finally chosen to defend yourself, they are immediately escalating to the most aggressive, most despicable legal tactics available to them. You honestly think I am being actively manipulated? I am completely sure of it, Eleanor. And sadly, I am also sure that you are absolutely not the first elderly woman this terrible thing has happened to. This is a common, insidious form of elder abuse. What then should I do immediately, Alma? You must fight them now, Eleanor, using every single legal tool and resource you possess. Do not, under any circumstance, allow them to take your money or, more importantly, your dignity. But what if I tragically lose my son forever in the process? Alma gently took my trembling hands in her own. Eleanor, you have already definitively lost your son. The Julian you lovingly raised, the one who respected you, the one who was profoundly grateful for your sacrifices, that Julian no longer exists in this world. What you are currently facing is a complete stranger who desperately wants your money and is fully willing to have you officially declared mentally incompetent to get it. He has made his choice clear. Her brutally honest words were like a physical blow to my chest, but they also carried the strange, immediate power of a deep liberation. She was right. My true son was already gone. Do you know a reputable, excellent lawyer, Alma? I know the best lawyer in the entire city for these specific cases. His name is Vincent Harris. He specializes exclusively in defending vulnerable older adults against family financial abuse and exploitation. Vincent Harris. The name immediately etched itself into my mind as a symbol of hope. Can you please give me his phone number, Alma? I will do you one better than that, my dear. I will accompany you personally to his office first thing tomorrow morning. That night, for the very first time in weeks of intense psychological turmoil, I finally slept soundly and deeply. Not because my daunting problems had magically disappeared, but because I had finally made the difficult, necessary decision to actively fight back. My son had completely chosen money over me. Now I was making the difficult choice to prioritize my own precious dignity over him. On Tuesday morning, Alma graciously accompanied me to the discreet, well-appointed law office downtown. Vincent Harris turned out to be a man in his late 60s, with kind, intelligent gray eyes, a calm, measured way of speaking, and a gentle demeanor that instantly filled me with confidence and relief. Mrs. Johnson, he began, his voice low and professional. Please tell me everything that has been meticulously happening, right from the very beginning. He made neat, concise notes on a legal yellow pad. I recounted the entire devastating ordeal. The small loans that were never repaid, the credit card that was shamelessly used without my knowledge, the unauthorized brazen copies, the unsettling late-night cash withdrawals, and finally, the ultimate, terrifying threat of a legal guardianship lawsuit. Do you have comprehensive documentation of all these transactions and events, Mrs. Johnson? He asked me. I have every single bank statement and the incredibly detailed report I specifically requested last week, I confirmed, producing a thick manila envelope. Excellent, he stated simply. Did you ever, at any point in time, formally sign a document granting your son or his wife permanent authorization to use your credit card? Never, Mr. Harris. Did you ever authorize them to deliberately make copies of your card? Never, under any circumstance. Vincent Harris finally stopped writing and looked directly into my eyes, his expression now gravely serious. Mrs. Johnson, what you are vividly describing to me is a clear case of family financial abuse. It is a serious crime, And we also have robust civil legal options available to us to fully recover your stolen money. How common is this terrible crime, Mr. Harris? Far more common than the public realizes, I assure you. The most frequent victims are elderly, financially secure women who naively trust a family member who then gradually, systematically appropriates their savings and resources. How exactly will we proceed now? First, we will aggressively defend you against the guardianship lawsuit and have it immediately dismissed. Second, we will fully and meticulously document the entire pattern of financial abuse. Third, we will legally compel them to recover your money. And fourth, we will implement comprehensive legal safeguards to ensure this despicable situation can never happen to you again. I felt an immense wave-like sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in many months, I finally had a powerful advocate on my side who completely understood the depth and gravity of the situation. How much will all this necessary action cost, Mr. Harris? My initial retainer fee is $3,000, he replied without hesitation. But I view that fee as a necessary investment to successfully recover your documented $25,000. I signed the legal contract that very same day. Over the next week, Vincent Harris and his dedicated legal team worked with meticulous intensity. They requested security camera footage from the numerous stores where my card had been used. They painstakingly tracked the electronic IP addresses of the various online purchases. They documented every single unauthorized transaction. What they ultimately found was devastatingly worse than I could have ever possibly imagined. Mrs. Johnson, Vincent informed me during our second urgent meeting, his voice carefully controlled. Not only did they aggressively use your card without your authorization, but they also fraudulently created fake credit accounts using your sensitive personal information. Fake credit accounts? What are you talking about, Mr. Harris? Yes, 5 additional credit cards, all opened exclusively in your name, but carefully sent to your son's residential address. The detailed statements show they have secretly accumulated almost $35,000 in massive, additional, unknown debt. $35,000 in debt I was completely unaware of. My heart began to pound painfully in my chest. How is this possible for them to do this without my knowledge? They had unfettered access to all your personal identifying information, Mrs. Johnson. Your social security number, your exact date of birth, your primary bank account information. With that critical data, it is frighteningly easy to apply for credit cards online without detection. Does this terrifying discovery mean that I am now personally responsible for repaying all that additional unknown money? Not necessarily, Mrs. Johnson. We are immediately going to legally dispute all those accounts as blatant identity fraud, but we need to act with extreme speed. That very afternoon, Vincent Harris personally accompanied me to file comprehensive, official fraud reports with the 3 major credit bureaus. We also immediately filed a formal criminal complaint with the local police department for identity theft and elder financial abuse. What will happen now to Julian and Seraphina? Your son will soon receive a notification that you are formally disputing the new debts and that you have filed active criminal charges against him and his wife. They will almost certainly contact you immediately to try and reach some form of agreement. An agreement? They will aggressively attempt to convince you to drop the formal charges and the criminal complaint in exchange for vague, hollow promises of repayment. You must not accept anything at all without consulting me first. He was absolutely correct in his grim prediction. On Friday evening, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered it tentatively. Mother, what in God's name have you done now? It was Julian, his voice sounding utterly different, scared, panicked, and genuinely desperate. I have protected my finances, Julian, I stated simply. We just received an official court summons. We are now being formally accused of criminal fraud because of your actions. You are being accused of criminal fraud because you committed criminal fraud, I retorted, my voice firm. We did not commit criminal fraud, Mother. We are your family. Everything we did was with your full verbal knowledge and consent. No, Julian, it was definitively not with my knowledge or consent. Mother, you have to drop these charges immediately. They are going to completely ruin our lives and our careers. You already ruined mine, Julian. You financially destroyed me. Please, we will repay all the money we took. Just drop the criminal. Charges now. With what money are you suddenly going to repay me the documented $25,000? We will find the money. We will take out a substantial bank loan. We will sell all of Seraphina's unnecessary belongings. Whatever it takes, Mother. And what about the $35,000 in credit cards you fraudulently opened in my name without my knowledge? There was a profound, suffocating silence on the other end of the line. How? How do you know about those cards, Mother? He finally stammered. Because I hired a lawyer, Julian. Because I thoroughly investigated exactly what you truly did to me. Mother, those cards were opened for entirely real emergencies. Seraphina required extremely expensive medical treatments. It was life or death. Medical treatments purchased at designer clothing stores and high-end sushi restaurants? Julian, you are still lying. Not all of the purchases were frivolous, Mother. I swear. All of the purchases were fraud, Julian. Every single one. Julian suddenly began to sob uncontrollably. It was the first time I had heard him truly cry since he was a small 12-year-old boy at his father's funeral. Mother, please, we are your family. You cannot completely destroy us over mere money. You already completely destroyed me over money, Julian. One more chance, Mother. Just one last chance, please. You have already been given 2 long years of chances, Julian. Then this is war. His voice instantly transformed. The raw tears vanished, replaced by a cold, terrifying fury. War. If you refuse to drop these charges, we are immediately going to proceed with the guardianship lawsuit. We are going to successfully prove that you are rapidly losing your mental capacity. We are going to find and present multiple witnesses who will testify that you have been behaving erratically and paranoid. What witnesses are you talking about now, Julian? Neighbors, shopkeepers, local people who have noticed your unstable, paranoid behavior. We will show the judge everything. My behavior is not paranoid, Julian. It is simply defensive and necessary. A judge will ultimately decide that, Mother. He violently slammed the phone receiver down, cutting the connection with a final sickening crack. The very next day, the true psychological war officially began. First came the non-stop phone calls. Julian, Seraphina, and multiple calls from unknown, unregistered numbers, all leaving manipulative messages on my answering machine. Some were tearfully pleading, others were openly threatening, but all were desperately trying to convince me to immediately drop the criminal charges. Then the unwelcome, persistent visits began. Julian would unexpectedly show up at wildly different times of the day, insistently rattling the front door, yelling incoherent pleas from the street that he just desperately wanted to talk. Seraphina would send her various friends and acquaintances to knock on my door with transparently invented pretexts and sob stories. One late afternoon, while I was tending to the flowers on my back patio, I overheard loud voices emanating from the street. 3 strange women I did not recognize were standing directly in front of my house, talking with exaggerated volume. That's the house of the crazy old lady who is publicly accusing her own son of stealing from her. How truly embarrassing, one woman declared loudly. Sometimes children just have minor financial problems and desperately need help, another woman added. At that advanced age, it is perfectly normal for the elderly to become distrustful and unstable. My own grandmother started behaving exactly like that before she deliberately left the sentence hanging unfinished, but the malicious message was perfectly clear. They were actively and systematically spreading toxic rumors about my mental state throughout the neighborhood. I immediately called Vincent Harris, my lawyer. They are doing precisely what I expected them to do, he informed me calmly. They are aggressively trying to create a narrative in the public eye that you are mentally incompetent. It is a common, insidious tactic in these despicable cases of elder abuse. They are trying to sway public opinion and create court testimony. What exactly should we do to counter this tactic, Vincent? Document absolutely everything, Eleanor. Start immediately recording every single incoming phone call. Take immediate photographs of every unwanted, unsolicited visit. Maintain a meticulous log of all the aggressive harassment. We are going to powerfully use all of this evidence against them in court. That very night, someone violently keyed my car. 2 stark, menacing words were crudely spray-painted in angry, vivid red on the garage door. Crazy miser. The message was horrifyingly clear and unambiguous. While I was attempting to fight them, honorably and legally, they were aggressively fighting me with psychological warfare and criminal vandalism. I immediately called Alma to inform her of the escalating events. Eleanor, you simply cannot remain in that house alone anymore. It is too dangerous. You must come and stay with me until this entire nightmare is resolved. I refuse to let them succeed in driving me out of my own home, Alma. Then I am coming to stay with you tonight, Eleanor. That night, Alma slept soundly on my living room sofa. Her steady, comforting presence immediately calmed my frayed nerves, but it also filled me with a profound, quiet sadness. At 70 years old, I urgently required a constant bodyguard against the malicious, predatory actions of my own family. At exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, my phone abruptly rang. I answered it tentatively. I hope you are satisfied, Eleanor. Seraphina's voice hissed, distorted and muffled as if she were speaking through a tightly held handkerchief. I truly hope you are satisfied with completely destroying a family over mere dirty money. Dirty money? What in the world are you talking about now, Seraphina? The money your husband made from what illegal businesses? She spat venomously. You actually think we don't know the exact real source of your life savings? You think we haven't found out? What are you saying, Seraphina? What do you mean? Ask the people in your local neighborhood what kind of shady man your dead husband truly was. Ask them what they really thought about his constant late-night business dealings, she abruptly hung up before I could formulate a single response. Robert had been a quiet, unassuming accountant. He had worked diligently at the exact same stable office for 20 continuous years. He had no late-night, shady business dealings or any form of dirty money. But I now perfectly understood precisely how far they were genuinely willing to go to completely destroy my reputation, my peace, and even the sacred memory of my deceased husband. They were actively attacking my past to cripple my future. Alma, I whispered weakly into the darkness of the room. I genuinely believe this is going to get much, much worse before it ever gets better. I know it will, Eleanor, she replied, calmly from the sofa. But we are going to stand together and face them down. For the first time in months of relentless psychological and financial siege, I did not feel completely alone anymore. I had the unwavering support of Alma, the professional protection of Vincent Harris, and, most importantly, the clear, unvarnished truth was undeniably on my side. But I had no knowledge if that powerful combination would ultimately be enough against the desperate, malicious actions of 2 people who had just permanently lost access to my money and were now fully willing to commit any crime to forcefully get it back. The court hearing date was formally scheduled for a chilly Tuesday in March. For the 2 long weeks leading to the final, decisive confrontation, Vincent Harris and his dedicated team worked with tireless, unrelenting efficiency to meticulously prepare my defense. There were countless documents, powerful testimonies, forensic financial evidence of the fraudulent purchases, and something that profoundly surprised and saddened me: other victims. Mrs. Johnson, your courageous decision to file this case has actively opened up a much broader, ongoing investigation, Vincent explained to me in his office, his voice grave. We have since found 3 highly similar cases in the last 2 years alone. Elderly families using the exact same insidious tactics, gradual, systematic financial abuse, followed immediately by aggressive guardianship lawsuits when the victim finally attempts to defend themselves. Your profound courage in reporting this despicable crime is now actively helping other vulnerable people. Eleanor. On the morning of the final hearing, I arrived at the Grand, imposing courthouse accompanied by both Vincent and Alma. In the tense courtroom, Julian and Seraphina were already seated, waiting grimly with their lawyer, a young man in an expensive, ill-fitting suit who would not stop nervously reviewing a massive stack of legal documents. When our eyes momentarily met across the sterile room, Julian immediately averted his gaze, refusing to meet mine. Seraphina, however, stared directly at me with a cold, terrifying hostility that made my knees genuinely tremble. The judge, a stern, imposing man in his mid-50s with a deeply serious expression, reviewed all the official documentation for several minutes before finally beginning the proceedings. The hearing itself lasted an agonizing 3 hours. Vincent Harris meticulously and systematically presented all the damning evidence he had accumulated. The $25,000 in documented, unauthorized purchases, the 5 fraudulently opened credit cards totaling $35,000 in new secret debt, the numerous late-night suspicious cash withdrawals, and the brazen, unauthorized copies of my credit card. Every single transaction was presented as evidence, documented with its precise date, exact time, geographical location, and precise amount. Julian's lawyer desperately tried to argue that absolutely everything had been verbally authorized by me, that I had willingly given them permission to utilize my financial information, and that my entire lawsuit was purely the regrettable result of my age-related mental confusion and rapidly declining cognitive capacity. He presented as evidence signed testimonies from 2 people who had supposedly noticed sudden, negative changes in my personal behavior. But Vincent Harris had deliberately prepared a truly devastating, unassailable surprise. He had successfully obtained the complete security camera recordings from several of the stores where my card had been extensively used. The images clearly showed Seraphina, completely alone, using my card while I was demonstrably at home. He also produced irrefutable phone records that confirmed that, during several of those purchases, I had been actively speaking on my home landline phone, making my physical presence at the distant stores impossible. The most powerful, compelling piece of evidence, however, was the expert testimony of my family physician, Dr. Paul Rodriguez, who had diligently been my doctor for 15 years. He testified, under oath, that my medical and neurological exams over the last 2 years showed a completely normal mental capacity for my advanced age, with absolutely no clinical signs of cognitive decline, dementia, or any debilitating condition that could remotely affect my ability to make sound financial decisions. When the judge finally called upon me to provide my testimony, I stood up with intensely trembling legs, but I forced my voice to remain firm and strong. I calmly explained how the entire ordeal had begun with small, unpaid loans, how they had gradually, aggressively taken control of my credit card, how they had secretly made copies without my knowledge, and how when I finally tried to defend my finances, they immediately threatened to take full legal control of my money and my life. "Mrs. Johnson," the judge asked me, his voice a low, commanding baritone, "at any time, did you ever specifically authorize your son or his wife to actively open credit accounts in your name?" "Never, Your Honor. I never authorized any additional credit accounts whatsoever." "Did you possess any knowledge that these credit accounts existed before you formally hired your lawyer?" "I had absolutely no knowledge of their existence. Your Honor, I only discovered the massive $35,000 in secret debt when Mr. Harris investigated my complete financial situation." When Julian finally testified, his flimsy story completely changed several times. First, he asserted that I had verbally authorized everything. Then, he tearfully admitted that some purchases had indeed been impulsive decisions. Finally, he reluctantly acknowledged that the additional credit accounts had been opened without my direct knowledge. But he vehemently insisted that it was purely for legitimate family expenses only. The judge interrupted him abruptly, his voice sharp and cold. "Mr. Johnson, regardless of your alleged intentions, opening credit accounts using another person's private, identifying information without their explicit, written authorization constitutes clear identity fraud, which is a serious felony crime. You must understand this fundamental truth. The judge's final written decision was clear, concise, and absolutely definitive. Not only did he completely reject the baseless guardianship lawsuit, but he issued a court order commanding Julian and Seraphina to immediately repay the $25,000 I had meticulously documented, plus interest and all legal costs. Furthermore, he ordered the immediate cancellation of all 5 fraudulent credit accounts and the permanent removal of that massive debt from my personal credit history. As if that stunning judgment were not enough, the judge issued a strict restraining order that legally prohibited them from directly contacting me for a period of 1 year. Any necessary future communication had to be conducted exclusively through the respective lawyers. The documented behavior in this highly distressing case, the judge declared, his voice ringing with authority, represents a systematic, calculated pattern of family financial abuse and exploitation. The presented evidence clearly demonstrates that Mrs. Johnson is completely, legally, and mentally competent, and that her actions to aggressively protect her finances were appropriate, proportionate, and absolutely necessary. The guardianship lawsuit not only lacks any legal merit whatsoever, but it appears to have been filed purely as a despicable tactic of intimidation to forcefully maintain unauthorized access to the plaintiff's critical financial resources. As we quietly exited the tense courtroom, Vincent Harris explained that the entire process of fully recovering the money could potentially take a few months, but the powerful court order legally obligated them to begin the monthly payments immediately. If they failed to fully comply with the order, they would instantly face severe additional charges for contempt of court, potentially resulting in jail time. That quiet, momentous night, in the profound tranquility of my own home, I sat in my beloved armchair with a comforting cup of warm tea and looked out the window at my well-loved garden. The vibrant red begonias were blooming brilliantly. The pure white geraniums were growing tall and strong. Everything I had lovingly cared for with my own 2 hands was still robustly thriving, surviving the storm. For the first time in 2 continuous, agonizing years, my money was finally safe and fully secured. My house was protected, my dignity was intact. My future was, once again, firmly in my own capable hands. But along with the deep, resounding sense of relief came an immense, crushing sadness. I had definitively won the legal battle. I had successfully recovered my money and protected my dignity and future. But I had completely, irrevocably lost my son. The Julian I had patiently raised. The boy I had lovingly breastfed in that very same armchair. The young man I had sacrificially supported for decades. That Julian was now gone forever, brutally replaced by a cold, calculating stranger who had been fully willing to have his own mother declared mentally incompetent and financially dependent, all for the simple selfish access to her money. Justice had ultimately triumphed, but my mother's heart remained permanently, deeply broken. 6 months after the monumental hearing, my life had slowly found a new, quiet normal. The repayment installments ordered by the judge arrived punctually without fail, every month, and my bank account was gradually, steadily recovering from the catastrophic losses. More importantly than the money, I had fully recovered my precious peace of mind. Vincent Harris religiously supervised that Julian and Seraphina fully complied with every detail of the court order. During those months of constant legal work, our conversations had gradually evolved far beyond mere legal matters. I discovered that Vincent had been a lonely widower for 5 long years, that he had 3 grown children who all lived in distant cities, and that he shared my deep, abiding passion for quiet gardening. "How do you manage to get your beautiful bougainvillea to bloom so profusely and beautifully?" he asked me one quiet afternoon while we were reviewing the latest payment documents on my sunny patio. "Patience and constant meticulous care," I replied, a small, genuine smile touching my lips, just like everything truly worthwhile in life. His eyes held a warmth that I hadn't seen directed toward me since Robert died. Vincent Harris was not just my lawyer. He was the symbol of my rediscovered strength, a testament to the fact that new, unexpected growth could indeed emerge even from the hardest, rockiest soil of profound betrayal. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over my thriving garden. The battle had cost me a son, but it had saved my life. I had learned the most critical, painful lesson of my 7 decades. The greatest act of love we can show ourselves is the unwavering defense of our own dignity. The experience taught me that money is merely a tool, but self-respect is the only true currency that appreciates with age. Never, ever allow the emotional manipulation of others, even those you love most, to compromise your hard-earned financial independence and the integrity of your mind. Stand firm, protect your savings, and when your instincts scream, listen to them immediately. I turned back to Vincent, and the sunshine suddenly seemed much brighter. The new life was beginning. The betrayal was agonizing. The courtroom was cruel. But I emerged victorious, not just over the theft, but over the fear. If my story of defending my dignity against the darkest manipulation resonated with you, and if you too believe that a mother's true worth is more precious than $25,000, please subscribe now. Join my community. Let's make sure no one walks this terrifying path alone again.